Good afternoon, students. So this is week 12 of our fall semester, and I want to say that summer semester, sorry. This is the last week of our class, and I want to congratulate everyone for having finished all 12 weeks. And so I have to say that just about everybody learned how to write the 5-paragraph essay structure. Everybody learned how to write their thesis statement as the last sentence of the first paragraph. Everybody learned how to write an introduction paragraph, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion paragraph. And so I'm really proud of the progress that you have all made this week, these last 12 weeks. And I'm also proud of the fact that you did all 12 weeks of forums. I think this is the first or second class that I've taught where every single week there is a forum. Before, all the classes was every other week there was a forum. So you guys got the extra 6 weeks of forums because of the new class redesign. And so then I'm also glad that, and this is also the last lecture that you'll ever get from me. And so if you want to, you can watch my other lectures on the Professor H writing channel. And so I sometimes update my videos. I teach at 2 schools, and so a lot of my religious videos is for my other school. But I just want to say that I had a great time teaching you guys these last 12 weeks writing, and I hope that you can take this writing with you, all the concepts. One last thing I want to mention, peer review. I want to mention that for the peer review, you learn that when you evaluate someone else's writing, you have to give constructive criticism. You have to make actionable suggestions. And so in real life, when you evaluate anyone, let's say you're evaluating someone because of their job performance and you want to give a job performance review, it's always good to give an actionable suggestion of what they can do to improve their job. And so the example I always give in my lectures is, for example, let's say someone talks like this. I think that I'm going to create a product that's going to really sell in that market, you know? And I think that if we expand to Asia, they will really appreciate this kind of product, you know? And if we do this, and that, you know? And so even though that person has a brilliant oral presentation with excellent statistics, yet she still ends every sentence with the annoying, you know? And so in her job review, if you're the boss, instead of saying, you know what, your oral presentation sucks, you would say something like, it would be really nice if you would stop saying, you know, at the end of every sentence. That is an example of an actionable suggestion. In other words, you're telling her something concrete that she can use to improve her oral performance. And so that I would hope would carry over into your real life, where that's how one gives constructive criticism. And I'm sure you've all had bosses who gave lousy evaluations by just being vague and saying, you do a lousy job, or you're not good enough. And then you're left thinking, but why? So it's always good to give an actionable suggestion. Just like I was always telling you guys throughout the last 12 weeks, give an actionable suggestion on how that person can improve their paper. So now it's up to you, and every time you give an actionable suggestion to somebody to improve anything, I hope you remember ENGO 101 for that. Anyway, so without further ado, I'm going to start my very last lecture. This week we're going to cover different kinds of introduction paragraphs, different kinds of body paragraphs, and different kinds of conclusion paragraphs. We're also going to cover the last kind of sentence that I haven't gone over, which is compound complex sentence. So I will go over sentence structure very, very fast because some of you are still writing sentence fragments in your essays. So I want to wish everyone a happy fall 2023. Halloween is coming up in about a month, and that's like my favorite season of them all. So let's get started on our very last lecture together. And so here I will share my screen. and this is the lecture share. So week 12. So week 12 we're going to go over APA mistakes, week 12 forum, compound complex sentences, different kinds of introduction, body, and conclusion paragraphs. So isn't it exciting that we are now in week 12? You are just about done with this class, and once you hand in your final draft of your Essay 2 and finish all your missing assignments, then you're done with this class. And so you just have to remember to double space your paper and indent 5 lines, the first line of every paragraph, use size 12 font size, and don't forget your APA in-text citation and APA reference citation. I'm proud of all the progress you've all made in this class. But in the week 11 forum, I am still seeing APA mistakes. For instance, when we cite an unknown fact, statistic, medical or scientific fact, you need to cite the source inside the body of your paper. In other words, right after you cite the fact, you give me the author, date, and page number for a direct quote with quotation marks, and author and date for paraphrase quote. If you are having trouble with APA, you can go to www.apa.org. So if you take a look at this paper, and what you're going to notice is that there's no APA in-text citations. And so here, as soon as I turned 18, I was officially an adult and got a job at a call center. So anytime you mention any kind of numbers, you have to put in the in-text citation. And this is an in-text citation in which you put into parentheses author and a date. So an in-text citation goes inside the body of your paragraph. This is and here, the majority of school-age children go straight to work from school, then work every other weekend and make about $200 every other week if they choose to work. So here, when you use any kind of numbers, you need to cite the source. Then you have to write in, if you have a direct quote where you cite verbatim, then you put in quotation marks, beginning quotation mark, ending quotation mark. Then you put in the author name, the date, and the page number. And then at the end of your paper, you have your one reference citation. You have the author's last name, author's first name, date. Then you italicize the name of the article. Then you write in either the website name or the publication name. Then when you retrieved it, retrieve 323 from whatever website you got it from. And so here, this particular student made a mistake because he did not cite his sources. In here you have medical. Most people having depression also have some kind of anxiety disorder. So you need to cite medical facts. How do you know most people have depression? So this is a medical fact, so then you need to put it into quotation marks, and you have to have the author name, the date, and the page number. And so here you have another medical fact, and you need to put in the author name and the date. This is actually correct, but it's not in alphabetical order. Oh, actually this isn't. You got also, when you write your reference citations, you got to make sure that your reference citations are in alphabetical order, B, C, and Z. And so what's missing in this one? It's missing a date. It's missing a date, article name, publication name. So this one, Zebediah, is wrong. Is this a correct reference citation? No, because this student only wrote a web address. And so he's missing his author name, date, article name, journal name, date they retrieved the website, and the reference citation. Okay, so here you have correct reference citations. And here you have a correct in-text citation, because this person is talking about a medical fact that outside in pleasant weather, it resets your mindset. So that is a medical fact, and therefore you have to cite the source. And then you have Keller, Matthew, and this is correct, okay? So for APA, we cite the following: statistics, percentages, prices, hours, numerical data, historical data, scientific data, medical data, population data, unknown knowledge, such as cultural data not familiar to American culture. Remember, in-text citations go inside the body of your paper. Citations go at the end of your paper. And so reference citations go at the end of your paper. So a direct quote is when you cite it word per word what the author says. You use quotation marks and you put in the author, date, and page number. A paraphrase quote is when you summarize the direct quote in your own words. So you have author, date. A reference citation is when you have last name, first name, date, article name, publication, date of retrieval, and then web address. How do we know how to find credible sources? Well, we use KAPOW. So C stands for currency within 10 years. A stands for author. In other words, it's written by an expert. P stands for purpose, that it's not an ad. O stands for objective, meaning that it's neutral. Writing style means that it's professional. And then we always look for websites that end in .edu, .org, or .gov. And Purdue OWL Library is an excellent source to find all kinds of information, from how to do APA to how to write an essay. So what is an annotated bibliography? When you start writing longer research papers in your college career, in other words, when you start writing research papers longer than 5 paragraphs, you may be asked to do a literature review or have an annotated bibliography. So the longer you stay in college, the longer your papers will become. Eventually, you will be asked to provide an annotated bibliography, which is simply a list of sources and summaries. What is included in an annotated bibliography? An annotated bibliography is a list of citations or a list of books, articles, and documents. Each citation is followed by a brief summary of about 150 words. So here is an example of an annotated bibliography where you have the reference citation, then you have a summary of that article. You have another reference citation, and you have a summary of that article. So basically that's all an annotated bibliography is that the difference between a reference list is where you just list your reference citations, and then an annotated bibliography, you include a summary of that article after your reference citation. And this is also called a literature review. In this class, you do not have to use an annotated bibliography. You just have to list your sources at the end of your paper. But if you are doing a longer paper, you can do an annotated bibliography because it's a great way to keep track of your sources, especially if you use like 20, 30 sources. So in the Week 12 forum, you're just going to reflect upon what you've learned in this class. How can you apply what you learned in this class to your life, to your workplace? How can my teaching be improved? How can my lectures be improved? How can my feedback be improved? Did you enjoy this class? What tips would you give future students in this class? How can this class design be improved? And also don't forget to do your end of class surveys. So if you want to be anonymous, then you can answer all of these questions anonymously in your end of class survey. And also don't forget that this is the last week of school. And instead of having all of your assignments due on Sunday, midnight, for this week, your assignments are all going to be due Friday, September 29th, 2023, at midnight. And also, another new thing is your class is going to be locked down after midnight. I'm not the one doing the locking down. The school is going to lock down all its classes. Oh, I'm going to repeat that. All your classes are going to lock down at midnight Pacific. So it's not just ENGL 101 is going to lock down. Everything locks down. That means that if you try to hand in anything at 12:05 a.m. Pacific, it's not going to go through. You're not going to have access to your classroom. You're going to get really angry and pissed. So if you want to avoid all of that anguish, you need to turn in your assignment before midnight Pacific September 29th, Friday. This is a new policy. They just started this semester, so you may not know about it. So you really need to be on time. You can't oversleep and let your alarm clock say, oh, I forgot, my alarm clock didn't ring, or something like that. Then if you are over the time, I no longer have the authority to extend it beyond midnight Pacific. If you need more time after that, you need to talk to your student advisor and appeal and ask for an extension to the class. So that's what happens if you hand in something late. Then you've got to go through all that rigmarole. So you want to avoid that rigmarole by simply be early and hand everything in before midnight. This is a new policy that Fortis College has implemented this semester. So this semester would be summer 2023 is the first time they're doing this. So don't forget, you've got to be on time. All zeros become permanent after midnight Pacific, Friday, September 29th. Okay, so let's start today's lesson, and I'm going to introduce the compound complex sentence. First, I'm going to go over a review of sentence structure that we did in week 7 for the week 7 quiz. And then I will introduce, because during the week 7 quiz, all I did was I did the 3 kinds of sentences. There was a simple sentence, compound sentence, and complex sentence. And we didn't go over compound complex sentence. So let's get at it. What is a simple sentence? A simple sentence is a subject plus verb and an object. A sentence is a complete thought, also known as an independent clause. Jack gets good grades. So Jack is the subject, gets is the verb, good is the gets is the verb, good is the adjective, grades is the object. Jack is tall. Jack is the subject, is the verb, tall is the adjective. Up the hill sits an old house. So up the hill is the prepositional phrase, sits is the verb, and old house is the subject. And so this is the same meaning as the old house sits up the hill. A compound sentence. A compound sentence is 2 independent clauses joined by a coordinating conjunction fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. So a compound sentence has fanboys, that is coordinating conjunctions that join 2 sentences together. A coordinating conjunction joins 2 simple sentences together to form a compound sentence. Jack gets good grades, comma, for he studies hard. So in this case, for means because. Jack is tall, comma, but Mary is short. Steve gambles all the time, comma, yet he loses rarely at the casinos. Complex sentence. A complex sentence is when you have a dependent clause and an independent clause that forms one complete sentence. And so one way to remember all of your complex sentences is using AAWWBUUIS. And that's hopefully I wrote that somewhere because I don't remember it. Okay, and so anytime you have a subordinate conjunction in which you have a dependent clause and an independent clause, that together is a complex sentence. Every time you have a dependent clause at the beginning of your sentence, you need a comma. So all of these words in blue are all, guess what? Subordinating conjunctions. And whenever you have a subordinating conjunction, you have a dependent clause. So after, although, as long as though, because, before, even though, if, in order to, now that, once, rather than, since, so that, then, that, though, unless, until, when, whenever, where, whereas, wherever, whether, and while are all subordinating conjunctions that start dependent clauses. And also, when you have just the subordinating clause, it's always a sentence fragment, and you need another independent clause to finish the sentence. And when the dependent clause comes at the end of the sentence, that's when you don't need a comma. So John goes to bed after he eats dinner. So after he eats dinner is a dependent clause that comes at the end of the sentence, and you don't need a comma. WWT, who, what, where, when, which, that. So when you have a relative clause, then you're going to have, if the relative clause is at the end of the sentence, you have 1 comma, and then if the relative clause is in the middle of the sentence, you have 2 commas. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Compound complex sentence. As the name suggests, a compound complex sentence brings both of these sentence forms together. That is, a compound complex sentence is simply a compound sentence with a dependent clause. So that is, it contains 2 independent clauses like a compound sentence and at least 1 dependent clause like a complex sentence. So Mary is rich. That is a simple sentence. Mary is rich, but John is poor. That's a compound sentence. While Mary is rich, John is poor. That's a complex sentence. And so an independent clause is a simple sentence in which you have subject, verb, adjective. I'm in the middle of my Zoom lecture. So Mary is rich is subject, verb, adjective. So that is a simple sentence. Mary is rich but John is poor is a compound sentence. Here you have a coordinating conjunction that puts together or joins 2 simple sentences. That is a compound sentence. Then when you have a dependent clause plus an independent clause together as 1 sentence, that's a complex sentence. Now, when you have a compound complex sentence, you have Mary is very rich, but John is very poor. So that's the compound sentence. So now if I add a dependent clause to the compound, to the sentence. So if I say Mary, who is French, is very rich, but John, who is American, is very poor. That makes it a compound complex sentence because you add a dependent clause to your compound sentence. And that is the longest sentence you can have in English. If you make your sentence any longer than this in English, then it becomes awkward. Lupe is a great student. That's a simple sentence. She went to school a long time ago. Also a simple sentence. But if you have Lupe, who is a great student, went to school a long time ago, and she is reviewing her grammar. And so here I combine all 3 of these simple sentences into 1 compound complex sentence. So when you're writing your essay and you have simple sentence, simple sentence, simple sentence, and your essay sounds very choppy, then you can combine your sentences into a compound complex sentence so that your essay would not sound so choppy. So when you look over your essay, you've got to make sure you have sentence variety. You cannot have just simple sentence, simple sentence, simple sentence, or you cannot just have compound sentence, and compound sentence. One of the traits of professional writing is that you have a lot of you have a mixture of simple sentence, compound sentence, complex sentence, and compound complex sentences. And so that way you don't sound like you're a second grader, because a second grader writes with a lot of simple sentences. And so here, for example, here's another example. John likes to eat. John likes to sleep. And so here, John and Mary like to eat. How's this one? Mary likes to eat. So if I add in Mary, I want to put that. Okay. Mary. So John likes to eat, Mary likes to eat. And so I could put all these 3 sentences together. Let's see if I can get this. Yeah, so I can, instead of having simple sentence, simple sentence, simple sentence, I can put all of these sentences all in one, compound complex sentence. John, who likes to eat, likes to sleep, but Mary likes to eat instead of sleeping. Here's another one in which you can combine sentences. Erin loves her brother loves her too, her brother pays his bills. So Erin loves her brother and he loves her too because she pays his bills. So that's an example of a compound complex sentence. The dog ran off when I chased him, but I didn't care. So that's another compound complex sentence. Though my mother says it doesn't matter, I am tall and she is short. So compound complex sentences are the most complicated sentences in English, as their name implies. A compound complex sentence has at least two independent clauses and at least one dependent clause. In simple terms, an independent clause can be a sentence on its own, while a dependent clause cannot. So compound complex sentences help us explore longer, more complicated thoughts with more parts than other sentences. They're good tools for explaining complicated ideas or describing long chains of events. So here's some examples of, you have a simple sentence: the severe storms caused a record number of tornadoes. Cooler La Nina temperatures were part of the cause. Here you have two simple sentences and it sounds really choppy. And then, so if you revise it, you can revise it as a complex sentence. Although the severe storms caused a record number of tornadoes, cooler La Nina temperatures were part of the cause. And so here, all I did was add in the word although. And as soon as you add in the word although, you turn the first sentence into a dependent clause, which then needs another independent clause to finish the sentence, which then naturally combines the two sentences together. Although the severe storms caused a record number of tornadoes, cooler La Nina temperatures were part of the cause. So you can combine two simple sentences as either a complex sentence, or you can combine two simple sentences as a compound sentence. The severe storms caused a record number of tornadoes, and the cooler La Nina temperatures were part of the cause. So here I put these two simple sentences as a compound sentence because I added fanboys, for, and, but, or, nor, so, yet. Now if I want to revise all of these sentences as a compound complex sentence, I can add even more to it. So although the severe storms caused a record number of tornadoes, cooler La Nina temperatures were part of the cause, and next year should see fewer, less severe storms. So here you have, and next year should see fewer, less severe storms, and then this is part of the compound sentence. So although here you have the dependent clause, and then you have a compound sentence. So the compound sentences would be cooler La Nina temperatures were part of the cause, and next year should see fewer, less severe storms. So that's the compound sentence. And then the complex sentence is although the severe storms caused a record number of tornadoes. And when you combine all of that together, you have a compound complex sentence. So that is the longest sentence you can have in English. I see someone raising their hand. And I guess that was just a reaction. Participants. So I will go back to my, so what are the four kinds of sentences in English? You have simple sentence, compound sentence, simple sentence, compound sentence, complex sentence, and compound complex sentence. And so here, and then here, let me go back to the, so how to write compound complex. And so as I was reading over some of your final drafts, some of you are still using the same transition words over and over again. So I'm going to go over a very short review of my week 8 lesson. So here are different ways in which, so instead of saying as a child, as a child, as a child, as a child, or as an adult, as an adult, as an adult, there are different ways in which you can write transitional sentences for your comparative contrast essay. So you could say, in contrast to adulthood, a child plays all day. Unlike adulthood, a child plays all day. Adulthood is filled with responsibilities, while children play all day. Although children play all day, adults work all day. Children play all day, however, adults work all day. In this way, you don't keep saying, as a child, as a child, as a child. I played all day, all the time. Okay, now I'm going to start the different kinds of introduction paragraphs, different kinds of body paragraphs, and different kinds of conclusion paragraphs. So up till now, all I've been teaching you is how to write a funnel introduction paragraph, where you write a hook, 5 background sentences, and you write your thesis statement. And you put your thesis statement as the last sentence of the first paragraph. Why is it called a funnel? It's because we start with something general, and then we finish the introduction paragraph with something specific, which is our thesis statement. So when you start out general and finish specific, that's like an upside down triangle, so that's why it's called a funnel introduction paragraph. So far, that's the only kind of paragraph you've been writing. But there are other kinds of introduction paragraphs you can be writing. So another common approach is what we call the turnabout introduction paragraph. This type of paragraph opens with a few sentences summarizing a point of view that is actually the opposite of the writer's own thesis. By the end of the introduction, the writer makes a complete turnabout and presents his or her thesis, the opposite of what he started out with. This technique is useful in the writer's purpose if the essay is arguing a controversial point of view or to clear up a commonly misheld misconception. And so here, let me put all of this together as one paragraph. And so basically here, the thesis statement is that smoking is bad for your health because smoking causes lung cancer, stomach cancer, and throat cancer. And so what you do in a turnabout introduction paragraph is you talk about the other side first. So if my thesis is I think that smoking is bad for you, then the other side would think smoking is not bad for you, smoking is harmless. So you start out by talking about what the other side thinks, then you flip it to what you think. That's why they call it a turnabout, because you're flipping it about. So many young people think smoking is glamorous. After all, young people see celebrities smoking in movies. All old-time movies in black and white feature Bette Davis smoking. Cary Grant lights up as he tries to win the heart of the girl. Rock stars light up, and commercials in magazines show cowboys smoking Marlboro cigarettes. As a result, young people associate smoking with maturity, elegance, good health, and sophistication. Reynolds Company even offers strawberry-flavored cigarettes to entice young people to smoke. Cigarette vendors claim that electronic smoking is harmless as it emits a water vapor instead of smoke, like a regular cigarette. As a result, young people come away with the idea that if they smoke an electronic cigarette, they will not suffer the harmful effects of a regular cigarette. However, and here's where you pivot to your point of view. Okay, so up till now, you're talking about what the other side thinks. The other side thinks smoking is good, smoking is elegant, smoking makes you look mature. Then you pivot and you say, however, or on the other hand, so you use a transition word of opposition, and then you pivot to your point of view. Your thesis statement is, however, smoking is bad for you because it causes lung cancer, stomach cancer, and throat cancer. So as you can see here in the turnabout introduction paragraph, I start out with the opposite point of view, and then I end up with my thesis. And this actually gives a great entry, makes a much more dramatic entry to my thesis. Another kind of introduction paragraph is known as the anecdotal paragraph or the dramatic entrance paragraph. And so in a dramatic entrance introduction paragraph, you use a story in order to introduce your topic. So here, my thesis statement is still smoking is bad for your health because it causes lung cancer, stomach cancer, and throat cancer. So instead of talking about what the other side thinks, I'm going to start out with a case study. In other words, I'm going to use somebody that, like if you're a nurse, I'm sure you can come up with a gazillion case studies of your patients. Betty sits in her wheelchair with a tube sticking out of her throat. She now uses that tube for breathing since her lung and nose cancer has eroded and destroyed her nasal passages. After 60 years of smoking, Betty has terminal nose and throat cancer. However, she does not want anybody else to suffer this sad fate, especially her grandchildren. She waits patiently as the cameraman prepares the camera for the most important "Just Say No" smoking ad. The cameraman motions to her to speak. Betty starts to speak. "My name is Betty Smith. I began smoking at the age of 14. Now I am 60 and I'm dying a horrible slow death due to lung and throat cancer. I no longer have a nose to breathe out of, and now I have to breathe out of a tube. I do not have much more time to live. So if you want to avoid my fate, please do not start smoking. Just say no when somebody offers you a cigarette because your life depends on it." As the commercial closes, Betty breathes a sigh of relief that maybe she saved a life. And then thesis statement. Indeed, smoking is harmful to one's health because smoking causes lung cancer, throat cancer, and stomach cancer. So as you can see from this example, the thesis statement is always placed as the last sentence of the first paragraph. So in all of these paragraphs, whether you're going to use a funnel introduction paragraph or a turnabout introduction paragraph or a dramatic entrance paragraph, all of the thesis statements are always at the end of the paragraph. Okay, thesis statements always at the end of the paragraph. Now we're going to cover different kinds of body paragraphs. There are 4 different body paragraph types: narrative, descriptive, expository, and persuasive. And we've covered all of these in this class. We covered narrative when we did essay 1, I became a nurse because. We covered descriptive when we did the week 3 and 4 forum, where we described a food and had everybody guess what that food is. We did expository when we did the persuasive essay in weeks 9 and 10. So we've actually done all of these kind of essays. So narrative is when you talk about yourself. Descriptive is when you describe something and you use your 5 senses to describe something. Expository is when you inform the reader or educate the reader about a topic. Persuasive is when you want to convince the reader of your point of view. So an expository body paragraph gives information about a subject. You are writing an expository paragraph when you are writing any paragraph to back up, describe, or illustrate the main idea. You are providing information to back up the thesis statement, or you are providing information to back up the topic sentence, which relates back to the thesis statement. Narrative body paragraph talks about events based on your life. A persuasive body paragraph is when you want to convince the reader of your point of view. And in your descriptive paragraph, you describe an event and you make the reader experience the event by using all 5 senses. Different kinds of conclusion paragraphs. So far, I've only taught you how to write a summary introduction paragraph where you repeat the thesis statement in the first sentence and then you summarize the highlights of the essay in the remaining 5 sentences. So here is an example. And the summary paragraph is the simplest, most common form of conclusion paragraph. So here's an example summary conclusion paragraph. Smoking causes lung cancer, smoking causes lung cancer, stomach cancer, and throat cancer. People who smoke have a higher chance of getting these cancers. Smoking has harmful cancer-causing ingredients like nicotine, which destroys the lungs, stomach, and the throat. People who smoke all their lives end up with a tube in their throat and a shorter lifespan. Do not be fooled by the celebrities and the glamorous movies. Smoking is not good for your health. Avoid smoking and vaping at all costs. A recommendation conclusion is a call to action conclusion paragraph, which suggests possible changes that can be implemented to improve the situation you have described. What actions can you propose that your readers can take to solve the problem? And so here in a recommendation conclusion paragraph, you are giving the reader recommendations on what to do about whatever topic you wrote. What takeaway lessons can the reader get from your essay? So that's a recommendation essay, is a call to action. So a recommendation conclusion paragraph is very common in business letters. Any kind of business correspondence always uses a call to action or recommendation conclusion paragraph. Smoking causes lung cancer, stomach cancer, and throat cancer. If people quit smoking, they can have a longer lifespan. I recommend people consult their doctors to find out ways to quit smoking. You can research quit smoking research groups you can join to quit smoking. You can chew nicotine gum to lessen the urge to smoke and then quit smoking altogether. You can also wear a nicotine patch which releases nicotine into your blood slowly to get off the habit of smoking a cigarette. A prediction conclusion can be a logical extension of the information in the body of a paragraph. Although it is oriented toward the future, it should not consist of unsubstantiated new claims. So in a prediction conclusion, you predict the future of once that person quits smoking, what will happen. So once you quit smoking, you will live a longer life. Once you quit smoking, you'll be able to live long enough to see your grandchildren get married. So in other words, what will happen in the future if you quit smoking? So therefore, prediction is you predict what's going to happen to the reader in the future. So smoking causes lung cancer. So you always repeat your thesis statement as the first sentence. So smoking causes lung cancer, stomach cancer, and throat cancer. Once you quit smoking, you will be able to lead a healthier life. You can live to see your children get married. You can get rid of your smoker's cough. You'll be able to breathe easier and exercise more. You don't have to worry about that your secondhand smoke is going to harm your children or your wife. You don't have to leave the building or go outside to smoke, so you can stay in your office to get more work done, and you can climb the stairs without losing your breath. So that is a prediction conclusion paragraph. A full circle, two more, okay, a full circle conclusion picks up an idea or image suggested in the introduction and echoes it in the conclusion. Such a conclusion might also refer back to an anecdote or example mentioned previously and show how it is still relevant. Full circle conclusions provide a satisfying solution to the problem you have raised. So smoking causes lung cancer, stomach cancer, and throat cancer. So going back to Betty, shortly after she made her stop smoking commercial, she passed away of lung cancer. Betty was glad that she was able to get the message out about the dangers of smoking to her children and grandchildren. She was worried about her grandson, who had just started smoking, and she wanted that grandson to stop smoking so he would not die of lung cancer and end up with a tube in her throat like she did, because Betty herself also started smoking at 14. She hoped that seeing the commercial and doing the commercial and seeing her look so sick before her death would convince her grandson to quit smoking earlier than she had. So a full circle conclusion then goes back to the story that we had in the introduction and then ends that story so that you come full circle. And that's a very satisfying kind of essay. A quotation conclusion is a strategy for getting and keeping the reader's attention. Using this form of conclusion ends your essay uniquely and memorably. You can use factual quotations, quirky facts, something unusual or funny. So smoking causes, so first you have to have your thesis, you repeat your thesis statement, and then you have smoking causes lung cancer, stomach cancer, and throat cancer. Now you have your quotation. 80% of smokers who start smoking in their teens die of lung cancer at a young age. Then you have your beginning quotation mark, ending quotation mark, author, date, and page number. It is a true fact that if you start smoking as a teen, you will die before you reach retirement. Why die so young? It is better to avoid becoming an early statistic by simply not smoking. When another teenager offers you a cigarette, just say no. Don't become part of the 80% of smokers who die young needlessly. Lead a long, healthy, non-smoking life by never starting to smoke in the first place. Just say no. So you have many different ways in which you can write a conclusion paragraph. You have a summary conclusion paragraph, you have a recommendation conclusion paragraph, you have a prediction conclusion paragraph, you have your full circle conclusion paragraph, and you have your quotation conclusion paragraph. So those are the different ways in which you can write your essay. So what if you have to write a paper that's longer than 5 paragraphs? And so here you would start out with your thesis statement. You still have smoking causes lung cancer, stomach cancer, and throat cancer. And then you have your body paragraphs and your conclusion. So if you're going to write a longer a sentence or a longer, paper. So what you're going to do is you're going to have your thesis statement. This will become the introduction, like a chapter in a book. And then here, each of these paragraphs could be chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. Or you can write 5 paragraphs, 5 paragraphs, 5 paragraphs, 5 paragraphs for each of these, each of these headings. And so that here you have chapter 1, smoking and lung cancer. So that's like paragraph 2. And then here you have smoking and stomach cancer. So that's like paragraph 3. And you just write more paragraphs. Basically all you do is, instead of just writing 1 paragraph, it just morphs into 5 paragraphs. That's all. You just make it longer, And so that's the only difference. You just have to make sure that if you're going to change it into a book, that each of the chapters have more or less the same length, so that it all looks balanced and even, okay? So everything becomes 5 paragraphs, and then instead of calling it paragraph 2, you're going to call it chapter 2, Instead of calling it paragraph 3, you're going to call it chapter 3. And instead of calling it paragraph 4, you're going to call it chapter 4, and so on and so forth. And this is how people write their PhD dissertations. And so that any book that you read, if you were to read the introduction paragraph, then turn the pages to the last page of the introduction chapter. So if you were to turn to the last page of the introduction chapter, you should find the thesis statement. So it's still the last sentence of the chapter. And so all your paragraphs would simply morph into chapters. So that's how you write a longer paper. It could be 3 paragraphs, 2 paragraphs. In other words, whatever length, you got to make sure it's all the same. So if you make this 2 paragraphs, this has to be 2 paragraphs, etc., etc., etc. So that is how you write beyond a 5-paragraph essay structure, you see. You would just make it longer. And this used to be a fun post-test when I used to have students who would show up for the last essay. For the last lecture. So if you have any questions about today's lecture, so this is the last lecture I'm going to give, and I made it as short as I could. And so if you have any questions about this lecture, you can always email me anytime.